Have you ever thought about trimming the horse's hoof yourself if you're doing a barefoot trim? I am absolutely convinced that you can do it. I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. As a matter of fact, I'm convinced that taking care of a horse hoof, at least understanding how to do it, is no more complicated than taking care of your own foot. Or maybe you've decided, I don't want to use shoes anymore. You know, the cost of putting shoes on a horse, I could feed 2 horses. Maybe you want to use a boot instead in certain terrain. Or maybe you're just trying to pick just the right farrier or trimmer, but you want to make sure that their philosophy lines up with your philosophy. I'm going to give you the tools to know what questions to ask and to even have an opinion on it. Again, the best news about this is it's not that complicated. And I'm going to just dive right in and tell you that the reason your foot is not complicated to take care of. Now, your foot is absolutely complicated, but you don't have to know everything about it in order to take care of your foot. You don't have to be a podiatrist to take care of your own healthy foot. If I asked you how many bones are in your feet, what ligaments do what are the names of the ligaments, how's the biomechanics of how your heel and toe should roll properly, I'm guessing most of you could not say. And yet you're still able to take reasonable care of your own feet. The only thing you really do with your feet is you trim the toenails. And with the horse, it's the same thing. You're just walking off here, aren't you? Is we just trim the toenails. In this case, it's going to be trim the hoof wall. In every other part of his foot, we're going to treat like our own foot. We are not going to touch it. Now not everybody buys into that philosophy, and I understand, and that's absolutely fine. And someone might say that, well, there's this exception to the rule when you need to. There's probably an exception to the rule. But the rule is, don't touch the rest of the foot. If you do that, if you don't touch anything other than the wall of the foot and treat it like your own foot, you can do it. Matter of fact, you don't need very many tools to do it, and I'm going to make an argument that it is going to be better for the horse. Not a little better, a lot better. I mean, imagine if I took my boots off right now and I was to have to walk around everywhere barefoot. And I walk around barefoot, and then I sit down and you take a sander and you sand off what little calluses I have on my little bare feet here, and then said, go walk around, go walk across your gravel driveway. Well, I would be quite tender. I wouldn't be as prepared for that. I want to have good, thick calluses on the bottom of my feet. And our feet regulate themselves. I don't have to worry about one callus growing up so high that now I stand like this. I don't have to worry about both of them getting so high that now I'm 6'5". That might be kind of nice, but it doesn't. It sloughs off, it manages and maintains itself based on the demand applied to it. Meaning if I walk on rocks regularly like my son, he can run barefoot down the driveway and his feet won't hurt at all. If I do it, because I don't even go barefoot in the house, I wear slippers. That's why that kids say I have newborn baby feet. My feet haven't adapted to that very well. If I took my son's feet, who's got thick calluses, and I sanded off the calluses and the extra skin on the bottom of his feet, he'd have feet as tender as mine. Similar to what we do with our horse. Our horse, throughout the month between trims, develops a thickness and a toughness in the center of their feet, and then we go in there and cut it and sand it and scrape it and whatnot. And I'm going to make the argument to you, as many will, that there's no need to do that. Matter of fact, may not be helpful. So I'm going to go through the anatomy. Then when I'm done with that, I'm going to show you what tools you can use. We can do it manually with files. I'm going to show you my favorite way, which is using an angle grinder. And then I'm also going to go through some of the common problems. How do you look at a hoof and pick out some of the most common problems that your horse may have? Thrush, or thin soles, or developing an abscess, or you suspect laminitis. There's just a handful of things that you'll be able to figure out on your own. And if you can't, that's when you call in the professionals. Same with the horse. So let's come here, buddy. Okay. The majority of the focus that I'm going to focus on is this outer hoof wall. I'm going to treat it like your own fingernails, toenails, and I'm going to show you how to trim it. Now this horse, once you learn a little bit about the anatomy and how it adapts to the environment, you'll be able to look at this horse hoof and say, you know what, I bet you this horse has been in real soft terrain for a while, and you would be correct. And I'm going to show you how you could know that by looking at it. Let's start with the anatomy. This, as you probably know, is the frog. The frog is the sensitive part of the foot. It feels, it's what's called proprioception. It has a lot of nerves in it. A healthy frog is very important to the health and the biomechanics of the horse hoof. The main thing I want you to know about the frog is the central sulcus. That's this crack in here because it can change depending on what environment the horse's feet have been in. If you look at this, this is a deep narrow. We'll talk about that later. Don't like this at all. A lot of things that need to be changed on this horse's hooves. We move from the frog, we go past the lateral collateral grooves. It makes up a series of arches. I mean, you could spend your entire life studying this just like you could your own foot. Again, I'm guessing if I was to ask you how many bones in your feet, what are the ligaments, what are the exact biomechanical movements of your foot during walking and running, you probably couldn't tell me. And you could spend your whole life learning that, but you don't need to do that to learn how to maintain it. This makes up an arch. On the lateral side of this arch, right here, it's called a bar. A bar is a little bit like the hoof wall. It looks like it kind of comes around and grows right here. This is considered the bar right here. The difference is it crumbles, it self-regulates. The hoof wall doesn't do that the same way. Many people will just trim this bar down if it's sticking up. Hey, I'm not opposed to them. They can do what they want. It's your horse. You can have different philosophy. But my philosophy is because this is self-regulating, the horse will maintain where it needs to be. If it needs a little bit more support for the frog, it'll grow it up a little bit. I won't take it down. When the frog needs less support, this will crumble and usually is level with the sole. So, frog, don't touch, with rare exception. Bar, don't touch. And here is the sole. This is the harder part of the foot. And I am going to say, guess what? Don't touch it either. That's all the anatomy you have to know, in my opinion. You don't have to understand how all the bones work in here, all the ligaments. You don't have to understand every disease out there. Someday you may have to call a professional because you're in over your head. But those are the rules of taking care and doing a self-trimming. I'm going to do a video on some common things, how to read a hoof, and some common problems like thrush and a few other problems that can happen, how to avoid it, how to treat it. But that's the basics that you need to know. For those of you that are very familiar with the hoof, that was probably somewhat painfully slow and painfully basic. If you're not familiar with the hoof and you're just kind of learning it and you really don't know much, that may have actually seemed a little too fast and you're still trying to grasp the big concepts. Don't worry if you're in that second group. I'm going to review the anatomy and what we're going to do and why we're going to do it every time I go to do a trim. Hopefully I can make it simple enough that anyone can do it. On the part 2, I'm going to go through the tools that you're going to need. If you're already very familiar with it, you're already doing your own trimming, or you feel comfortable, you've got your files, you've got your equipment, you're pretty set on that, skip part 2, go right to part 3, and I'll see you there and I'll explain how I do it. This, by the way, is my good buddy Journey, one of the rarest horse breeds in the world, a Carolina Marsh Tacky, out in the rain on a fall day, doing what I love to do.